Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about wild horses. Wild horses are horses living in a state of nature and not ordinarily tamed or domesticated, which means that they were growing and produced without human aid or care. Rarely do we have any access to this because most of the horses we deal with, or animals for that matter, are animals that have been bred in captivity. So we have never gone outside captivity to actually interact with any horses or animals. Feral horses are horses that have escaped captivity or escaped our sphere of influence. So, horses that were brought over from Spain, because many of our horses were brought from Spain. And so horses that were brought over that escaped into the wild, they reverted back into their natural state or their nature of being afraid of humans and taking care of themselves, not relying on anything that we do with them. Groups of horses can be found many places in the world. The free-roaming Mustangs of North America, they are descendants of horses that were domesticated from Europe over 400 years ago. For example, a wild horse subspecies living in a zoo or in private hands like we have them here may not be wild at all, which means they may not show any wild behavior. So what would wild behavior look like? Wild behavior would be afraid, trying to run away from us, not being able to touch them. So wild is they do not want any interaction with humans. So you could have a horse that has been living in the wild, and it is a wild breed, a subspecies, and if you bring them into captivity, you can actually tame them. And once you've tamed them, they have become unwild. So they are now domesticated. A species in population or groups of populations that can potentially interbreed, they are called a species. So they are like horses are a species. Any horse can reproduce with another horse. A subspecies, on the other hand, are subgroups within a species that have different traits and are defined specifically by scientists. Of these three wild subspecies, only two are proven ancestors of our domestic horse breeds, the Soraya and the Exmoor. Recently, evidence has produced to suggest the Mongolian horse has crossbred with the domesticated horses. The Przewalski horse, the only true wild horse whose ancestors have never been domesticated, is stocky and sturdy and exists only in captivity. The last wild horse was seen in Mongolia in 1968, and that is the Przewalski horse. Mongolian wild horses, as well as the Soraya, have their own genotype, which is your complete genetic identity. The Exmoor typically shows one of two genotypes common in Nordic ponies, but several genotypes are present. None of the wild horse subspecies are pure anymore. They all have a certain amount of outside blood. They have bred within their subspecies. In Iberia, the swamps were the last retreats of the wild horses. Before they were drained and turned into farmland, these horses roamed there freely. It would be wrong, though, to classify those horses as swamp horses. They didn't survive there because they preferred to be in the swamp. They fled to the swamps to survive. Horses are amazingly capable of adapting to different habitats, from desert to marshland, from grassland to woodland, from swamp to mountain. Wild horses are able to survive anywhere if given a chance to adapt. These primitive horses represent a gene pool that we should strive to preserve. In preserving the last wild horses, we should not only be concerned about their numbers, the purity of their breeds, and the inbreeding coefficients, but also with their behavior characteristics. Experience shows that wild behavior is hard to retain. Instincts need to be maintained and sharpened, and if lost, they need to be reintroduced to the breed. Today, wild horses and burros are present on 179 different preserves, covering 31.6 million acres. These are found in Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, and Wyoming. So they're all found out west, the majority of these preserves. But the Paynes Prairie Preserve State Park in Gainesville is Florida's first state preserve and a peaceful oasis where you can spot wild horses roaming and even some bison roaming free alongside of them. Many people flock to the Mediterranean coast of France to see herds of wild white horses called Carmog. The Carmog horses typically stand between 13 and 14 hands. And we talked about a hand being 4 inches from top to bottom, and they're put hand over hand. So roughly the same size as Lady. Little taller than Lady, but close. Between Lady and Prince. It is a rugged, stocky, and level-headed horse, making them excellent mounts for herding and working in the fields. The Carmog horse is traditional mount of the cowboys who herd the bulls used in bullfighting in southern France. It is one of the oldest breeds in the world, and it is said to have lived in the Carmog marshes and wetlands for thousands of years. Traditionally, the horses live in the semi-wild conditions of France in the marshy areas of the region. 2 herds of wild horses make their home on the Assateague Island at the Maryland-Virginia line. A combined herd of approximately 150 adult ponies live on this island. The herd size is controlled by a pony auction on the last Thursday in July. These ponies are called the Chincoteague ponies. Each year, tens and thousands of spectators come to watch the cowboys swim the pony herd from the island of Assateague to the Chincoteague Island. And the purpose of the swim is to move the herd so that the foals can be auctioned. The auction serves 2 purposes. It reduces the size of the herd, and it also funds the fire department on that island. The pony committee is very careful to separate only foals that are old enough that can eat solid food and are ready to begin their new life. Any foals younger than this stay with their mother. They are still sold, but they are kept together in a separate place until the foals are ready to be weaned. These ponies are small, sturdy, shaggy, and they have adapted to their environment over the years by eating dune and marsh grasses and drinking fresh water from ponds. Wild horses generally gather in groups of 3 to 20 animals. A stallion, a mature male, leads the group. The group consists of mares, females, and young foals or babies. When young males become colts at around 2 years of age, the stallion, the adult male, drives them away from the herd. The colts then roam, and other males join them, and they gather their own band of females. As they get older, then they separate that herd and they each take part of the females with them. Wild horse subspecies have 66 chromosomes instead of 64 chromosomes. The domesticated horses have less chromosomes than the wild horses. But generally speaking, between 18 months and 3 years of age, colts and fillies are driven away from the herd. The fillies form a new herd. The fillies are the young females. And the males tend to join a different herd until they reach the age of 5 and are mature enough to fight for their own herd. This keeps the population of the herd down so that there's enough food distributed amongst the herd. They have territories, and so if the territory has too many horses, then that grass, or what keeps them sustained, is compromised. Many horses living in the wild today are actually feral horses. Remember, we defined feral as a horse that had been domesticated, that got loose, and now has returned to wild behavior.